And welcome to Hannity. And tonight, fired former FBI Director Jim Comey. He is at it again after posting seashells seemingly calling for Donald Trump to be murdered, or 8647 on Instagram. Gee, he never thought what that might mean. Anyway, Mr. Higher Honored James Comey, the coward that he is, ran to his favorite network, MSDNC, to declare his righteousness, his innocence, and there were no heartfelt apologies, no well wishes for the president, who was shot on stage only a few months ago. Instead, Comey was full of excuses, and he actually tried to make the case that it's not Donald Trump. No, he's the victim here. Take a look.
And we saw in the sand someone had arranged shells with numbers. And Patrice, my wife, said, why would someone put an address in the sand? And I said, I don't know. And we stood over it, and I said, I think it's some kind of like political message. And she said, 86, when I was a server, she did a lot of work in restaurants, meant to remove an item from the menu when you ran out of ingredients. And I said, well, to me, as a kid, it always meant to leave a place, to ditch a place. It's hard to have regret about something that, even in hindsight, looks to me to be totally innocent.
Sounds a little too cute by half, doesn't it? The head of the FBI, he knows what 86 means, to be 86. James Comey to me is a liar who, from day one, has tried to get Donald Trump one way or another. He used Hillary's phony, dirty Russian disinformation dossier, you might recall, to obtain secret FISA warrants against the Trump campaign and spy on that and his transition team and the White House. He personally signed 3 out of 4 of them. He perpetuated the Russia hoax, even when he knew it was a smear campaign orchestrated by Democrats. And according to reports, he was warned in 2016, in August to be specific, not to use the political research, which now has totally been debunked. As a matter of fact, it was only years later, under questioning from Senator Lindsey Graham, that he finally admitted that, knowing what he knows now, he never would have ever signed the warrants. Wow, we knew it then. He knew it then, too. Take a look.
Knowing then what you know now about all the things that we've come to find, would you have still signed the warrant application against Carter Page in October, January, and April?
No, I would want a much more complete understanding of what we were.
Thank you very much.
No, he wouldn't have. And by the way, that Carter Page, that was a backdoor to all things Trump world. Actually, it's what he knew then. That's what matters. Under his repulsive so-called leadership at the FBI, he transformed what was the world's premier law enforcement agency into nothing more than an arm of the Democratic Party, and became from day one the leader of the Trump derangement syndrome deep state. And now he wants to sell a book, wants to get rich, while casually calling for what? Putting out an Instagram post, 8647. That sounds like somebody wanting the assassination of a sitting U.S. president. And then act like I have no idea what that means. I think it's political in nature. Oh, let's act dumb. It's time for Comey to be held accountable. Now, we'll have much more on this straight ahead tonight. But first, we do begin with terrible news. Joe Biden, the former president, has now been diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer. Sadly, this has metastasized to his bones. Of course, everybody should pray for him, wish him well. Cancer is a horrific disease, and no one deserves to go through this. Unfortunately, Biden's cancer is aggressive, with a Gleason score of 9, which is almost unheard of, according to close friends, medical doctors that I know. And according to most physicians, this type of prostate cancer, it takes years to get to this point. Even over at MSDNC, one-time Biden ally oncologist Ezekiel Emanuel stated with quite confidence that the former president likely had prostate cancer for up to 10 years, including all 4 years that he was in the White House. Take a look.
Doesn't it take some time for prostate cancer to develop to a point where it would spread to the bones?
Oh, he's had this for many years, maybe even a decade, growing there and spreading. That's right.
This is not speculation. If you have prostate cancer that is spread to the bone, then he's most certainly, you were saying, had it when he was president of the United States.
Oh, yeah. He did not develop it in the last 100, 200 days. He had it while he was president. He probably had it at the start of his presidency.
Now, keep in mind, this is generally a slow-moving cancer. As a matter of fact, most men will die with some prostate cancer, but they won't die from prostate cancer. Now, it's one of the most detectable cancers that does exist. In fact, detection is very simple, a standard blood test. They call it a PSA test. And for the last 4 years, the president has enjoyed world-class medical care as president with rigorous testing, or what should have been rigorous testing. So the question tonight, what happened? Why are we learning about this stage 4 cancer diagnosis now? It has sadly metastasized to his bones. That has now put his life in jeopardy. Of course, this comes in the shadow of a very real cover-up conducted by Joe Biden's family, his staffers, the state-run legacy media mob surrounding the former president's obvious cognitive decline, or as Van Jones put it, very truthfully, a crime against our republic. Take a look.
I was shocked to see his condition when he came out, and so was the world. And that wasn't the first time he was in that condition. The book makes it very, very clear. There are people who knew and said nothing. And that is a crime against this republic. And I think the Democrats are going to pay for a long time for being a part of what is now being revealed to be a massive cover-up.
Now, every week since at least 2019, right here on this program, we sounded the alarm about Joe Biden's mental difficulties and his cognitive decline. Now, at the time, we were ridiculed, we were mocked, we were called conspiracy theorists, but every night we brought the tape to you, our viewers, very real, not cheap fake videos of Joe Biden struggling to function. They didn't do any of this on fake news CNN or MSDNC or the 3 major networks. That would include, by the way, the Washington Post, New York Times. They lied to their readers. They lied to their viewers. They did it day after day. They did it night after night. And they lapped up whatever garbage the White House was feeding them about Joe Biden's, oh, this has to do with the fact that he stutters, or, you know, it's hard for us to keep up with him, even though we're only, 30 years old. Now, fake Jake Tapper, he's poised to make a lot of money pretending that he and other journalists were a victim of a White House cover-up. Jake, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, did you really think it was strange that Joe was taking every weekend off while never doing any unscripted pressers, getting his questions ahead of time from your fellow journalists? Or what about falling again and again and wandering off stage and getting lost and never holding cabinet meetings? What about the Hur report? The special counsel declined to recommend charges in Biden's classified documents probe, not from a lack of evidence, but because they determined that Joe Biden wasn't fit to stand trial, or, as Hur himself put it, the president was an elderly man with a very poor memory. The Biden White House fought tooth and nail to prevent the audio of that interview from being released, and for good reason. Take a listen.
What was happening, though, 1 month ago died, May 30th, 2018. Was it 2015 he died?
2015.
I think it's 2015.
I'm not sure the months are, but I think that was.
Yeah.
That's right, Mr. President.
And what's happened in the meantime is that Trump gets elected in November of 2017? 2016. All right. So, why do I have 2017 here?
That's when you left office, January of 2017.
Yeah, okay. But that's when Trump gets sworn in.
Right.
January.
Right. Correct.
Okay, yeah. Correct. And in 2017, Bo had passed, and this is personal.
He didn't know the year that his son passed. He didn't know the year that Donald Trump was elected. Now, my father died in late March of 1997. I remember it well. The meandering interview was really bad. There were points during the interview where Biden didn't make any sense at all. Take a listen.
You know, I went to Mongolia and created unfortunately embarrassed the hell out of the leader of Mongolia. They were doing what they would do at the time of the invasion of the Mongols into Europe in the 800s. And so we're out in the middle of nowhere, and you're looking up on the hill and you see this tiny line. You know, it's a 20-mile horse race with all these kids under the age of 16 on bareback racing to come down. And, you know, they're sumo wrestlers and doing everything they do. And so they walked over and they had a target, big bales of hay 100 yards away. And these guerrillas were, you know, taking shots. And I don't know if it's going to embarrass me or to make a point, but I handed the bow and arrow. I'm not a bad archer. But the only problem they were if I could pull it back, so and pure luck, I hit the target. No, I really did.
Whoever told Biden it was a good idea to run for re-election? Why did they lie to all of you? You know, was it the woman pictured right there sitting at the head of Biden's last cabinet meeting, Dr. Jill Biden? Did she not know? Really? Are we to believe that? You know, did she not know firsthand about her husband and the cognitive struggles that were clear and obvious to anybody with eyes to see? Now, either she's delusional or she simply just flat out lied to everyone. And so did his staffers, and so did elected Democrats on the Hill, and the state-run legacy media mob. This is probably the biggest scandal in American presidential history, certainly the greatest national security threat in history. And so, like many Americans, I have questions about the timing of all of this. And while we're at it, could someone really tell us, you know, who was in charge during Biden's years as president? Because it wasn't Joe. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.